When you think of a roller coaster, you picture a perfect, uninterrupted loop. It all begins with a station building, then a lift hill, several thrilling drops, and ends with a set of brakes and a return back to the station. Perfect. But hidden in plain sight on almost every major roller coaster is a piece of shape-shifting track, one that completely ruins this uninterrupted circuit. Welcome the switch track, a movable track segment that has evolved far beyond its original purpose. What started as a simple engineering solution is now a vital tool for creating unique, complex theme park rides. Roller coasters like Hagrid's Magical Creature Motorbike Adventure at Universal's Islands of Adventure. So, what actually is a switch track? Why do these movable track pieces even exist? And how are they currently changing how we normally ride roller coasters? For most of roller coaster history, switch tracks had a simple, defined role: access to vehicle maintenance. If you're an avid roller coaster rider, you might have noticed something like this: a section of track adjacent to the main track which appears to go into a weird separate building. That building is the roller coaster's maintenance shed. As part of daily running, roller coaster vehicles are brought into the shed for maintenance to perform routine inspections, swap the wheels, or to simply store additional trains when they're not in use. These maintenance switch tracks, called transfer tracks, can be found on some of the world's oldest roller coasters. Rides such as Jackrabbit at Kennywood and Cyclone at Luna Park have this track located near the station. To place a train into maintenance, it is first rolled onto the segment of track. The transfer track then slowly moves horizontally, connecting the train to the shed. This exact same method is used today on rides like Raptor at Cedar Point. Unfortunately, you'll never get to experience this track in action. They're strictly off limits to riders. There's a problem with the classic transfer track, however. It takes up a lot of space. The entire ride vehicle has to fit on it. This problem, and many others, has led to a multitude of exciting ways to access the boring maintenance shed, including the compact slide switch. Instead of moving the entire train, the switch only redirects it. Two separately shaped track pieces can move horizontally. One allows for normal operation, and the other points towards the maintenance area. If a train needs to be added to operation, for example, like on Pantheon at King's Dominion, the track can be swapped from the straight to the curved segment. As only the track moves, the transition can happen faster and takes up just a fraction of the space. It does get even more compact though. In the late 1970s, Vekoma introduced the rotating switch track to the world. Instead of the track moving horizontally, the rotating switch track spins. On one side you'd find a piece of track to enable normal operation, and on the other, a curved section pointing towards the maintenance shed. To swap between the two, the entire piece of track rotates 180 degrees on the spot. Because there are so many different ways to achieve the same result, roller coaster manufacturers now choose the style that best suits their needs. For example, Icon at Blackpool Pleasure Beach has limited surrounding space. The station building and maintenance shed are joined together. The entire station platform moves horizontally as one big unit. In the exact same park, you'll find the big one, which does the exact same thing, but vertically. The trains are stored in levels underneath the ride platform. Genius. For most of roller coaster history, these switch tracks were used only a handful of times per day, and more importantly, were never experienced by guests. However, in 1979, Disneyland changed that. Disneyland is an inherently busy theme park, catering for a huge number of guests. Demand was high, so more and more new rides were built to cope with it. The switch track presented a solution to this problem. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad debuted at Disneyland in 1979, with two parallel but separate stations. The ride's queue would enter in between the two before splitting off, one left, one right. Each station is independent and loads guests into a separate ride vehicle. The trick was, a switch track could be found immediately before and after the station. When one station was ready to send its train, the switch track out front would align itself with that side, connecting that station to the main ride. Once the train has passed the switch track, the track would then align itself to the other side, ultimately swapping back and forth all day. The same would happen for the switch track at the end of the ride. It would point guests back towards whichever station was empty. This was huge. 2 trains could be in the station at once, drastically improving operations and effectively halving load times. Perhaps unsurprisingly, this exact method can be found on many roller coasters today, including some of the world's flying roller coasters like Manta at SeaWorld Orlando. It didn't take long for other theme parks to come up with their own solutions to this problem. For example, Momonga Standing Loop Coaster in Japan also featured 2 stations located either side of the main track. On one side, guests could ride in a normal train, and on the other, a stand-up train. When the normal train came to the end of its ride, it would re-enter the station. Then, the entire platform would shift horizontally, simultaneously bringing the stand-up train in line with the main track, while also enabling the normal train to begin loading new guests. After the stand-up train's ride, the opposite would happen. This design was eventually adapted to other roller coasters too, including Mr. Freeze at Six Flags Over Texas. Other rides use a spinning turntable to create the same effect. Pulsar at Wallaby Belgium has 2 sides, one connected to the U-shaped track layout and the other connected to the station. Once a train has completed its ride and the other side is ready, the turntable begins to rotate, bringing the new riders onto the track while moving the previous riders into the station. Very clever. These designs transformed how switch tracks were used. For the first time, guests rode right through them, though the ride experience wasn't really affected. That all changed in 1986, when Japanese roller coaster company Togo designed the Ultra Twister Coaster, a ride only made possible by switch tracks. You see, the Ultra Twister Coaster was built with space in mind. It only travels in 2 dimensions. The train doesn't have space to turn around. To resolve this problem, the ride starts with a switch track. First, riders are pushed backwards before rotating 90 degrees facing up towards the sky. Then, they would climb the lift hill and begin the first half of the layout. At the other end of the 2D layout, the trains enter a second switch track. This one rotates riders slightly downwards, allowing them to complete the rest of the layout entirely backwards. Ultimately, without these 2 switch tracks, the ride just wouldn't exist. The Ultra Twister Coaster marked the first time switch tracks had been used to fundamentally alter and perhaps even enhance the ride experience. That entire concept was set to explode in popularity. The widespread usage of switch tracks to change the ride experience didn't happen overnight. It took theme parks and roller coaster manufacturers time to really explore the possibilities. Shortly before the year 2000, the roller coaster world debuted the elevator lift, with Matterhorn Blitz at Europa Park becoming one of the earliest examples. The ride didn't start with a lift hill or a launch. Instead, riders enter a large vertical tower, which then proceeds to drag them vertically upwards. At the same time, a second piece of track would descend down from the top, ready for the next train. The lift itself was slightly bowed in the middle, allowing the 2 pieces of track to cross before moving back towards the center of the tower. The elevator lift offered a compact and novel solution to the beginning of a ride. This, however, was nothing compared to what was about to come. Just 3 years after Matterhorn Blitz in 2002, Vekoma unveiled a truly one-of-a-kind ride, Gravity Max, at Discovery World in Taiwan, also known as the world's first tilt coaster. The main ride was just like any other. It had twists, turns and loops. The start was not. Instead of a traditional drop, Gravity Max features a huge segment of tilting track. The train ascends the lift before coming to a stop on a large piece of straight track. Then, the entire track segment tilts forwards, pointing the nose of the train vertically towards the ground and connecting it to the rest of the layout. When ready, riders would be released from the track, plummet 90 degrees towards the ground, and enjoy the rest of their ride. Naturally, the tilt track was a huge success. How couldn't it be? Just look at how cool it is. Actually, that's a lie. It gained 0 traction, and for most of history, Gravity Max was the world's only tilt coaster. More on that later. However, it wasn't the only roller coaster built that year to feature tilting track. Shortly before, Germany's Phantasialand debuted Wingers, a pair of dueling spinning roller coasters with not 1, not 2, but 3 switch track elements. Both rides start with an elevator lift, then feature a tilting track segment partway through the ride where one roller coaster tilts forwards while the other tilts sideways. And then both end with a bounce track. Yes, a bounce track. Immediately before the ride's station, a small track segment drops briefly before quickly raising back into position. That's it, a little pop. It all happens fairly seamlessly, creating a fairly weird, unexpected sensation. Just like the tilting track, this feature was not an immediate hit. Understandable really, it's kinda weird. Fortunately, it wasn't continuous doom and gloom for the world of switch tracks. In 2004, Universal Studio Florida's Revenge of the Mummy and Revenge of the Mummy The Ride at Universal Studios Hollywood simultaneously introduced many to a truly experience-based use of not just one, but 2 switch track elements. Partway through both rides, guests are faced with a dead end. Then, a whole load of scarabs begin crawling out of the wall in front. Suddenly, to escape, the train is propelled backwards, away from the horde. This entire sequence is achieved with a switch track working behind the scenes. Before guests meet the dead end, they cross over a switch track. Then, while watching the scarabs in front, the track switches position, aligning riders with the rest of the layout. Then, when ready, the train is released to seamlessly carry on with the experience, but backwards. To later point guests in the right direction, both versions of the ride use turntables. These rotate the trains while a scary projection is played right above guests' head, continuing the ride's story. Revenge of the Mummy demonstrated to the world just how well suited switch tracks were to themed experiences. Both rides not only set the standard for themed roller coasters for many years to come, but also introduced the concept of using switch tracks to change the direction of the train mid-ride. Just 1 year after their debut, Disney's Animal Kingdom used the exact same effect on its brand new roller coaster, Expedition Everest. After climbing the lift, the train comes to a sudden dead end at the top of the mountain. At the same time, in the background, a switch track moves position. Then, moments later, guests hurtle backwards directly into the mountain. Spooky. Both Revenge of the Mummy and Expedition Everest have since become fan favourites, thanks, in part, to their innovative use of switch tracks. Unfortunately, not every ride shared the same success. In 2008, Freestyle Music Park and Premier Rides debuted a new type of switch track, the Ferris Wheel Lift Hill, which does exactly what you think it does. Trains would enter at the bottom of the lift, rotate round, and then connect up with the ride's first drop. A visually interesting switch track element? Yes. Slow and cumbersome in reality? Also yes. The Ferris Wheel Lift Hill had a remarkably short lifespan, as did Freestyle Music Park itself for that matter. The year is now 2010. UK theme park Alton Towers was looking for its next record-breaking ride. Their idea? Switch tracks. The park, alongside roller coaster manufacturer Intamin, debuted 13, the world's first roller coaster to feature a vertical drop track. Halfway through the ride, guests climb into an ominous-looking building and come to a sudden dead-end stop. Moments later, the entire train drops briefly, then plummets several meters further towards the ground. Abruptly, riders find themselves in an entirely different room before launching backwards and completing the remainder of the ride. While the drop itself isn't huge, the train does enter genuine freefall, albeit briefly, until magnetic brakes on the side of the track bring it to a steady stop. By seamlessly integrating the drop track, 13 added a thrilling element of surprise, elevating the entire ride experience. Since then, the concept has exploded in popularity, sparking the creation of over 10 vertical drop tracks at theme parks all over the world. The previous decades had seen a constant flow of new switch track design. Since then, theme parks have gone on to refine these ideas further, taking more common switch track elements and using them to create truly unique experiences. For example, ZDT's amusement park debuted Switchback in 2015, a wooden roller coaster with a vertical spike. The ride would climb the lift and complete the layout forwards, before climbing the spike, falling back towards the ground and navigating the entire ride in reverse. At the bottom of the first drop, a switch track would then reconnect the track back towards the station. This design was a stroke of genius. It increased the duration of the ride experience while using the same amount of track, and enabled a second train to load new guests within the station at the same time. Unsurprisingly, this exact concept is still all the rage today, including on the newly opened 100% Wolf at Plopsaland Deutschland. Just a year later, Hefe Sonnekland employed the same idea in a different fashion. They opened Soaring with Dragon, an Intamin swing launch coaster. The ride begins with guests crossing over a switch track to enter a large launch straight. Behind them sits a backward spike element. Prior to launching, the switch track connects to the backward spike. Then guests are launched forwards, then backwards, then forwards once more, propelling them over the top hat elements into the remainder of the ride. At the end, guests find themselves back at the station building. Again, more ride time for less track without compromising on capacity. Intamin, the ride's manufacturer, took this concept as well as their previous switch track designs and crammed it all into a one-of-a-kind ride. Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure opened at Universal's Islands of Adventure in 2019, featuring a ridiculous 7 launches. But, more importantly, it became one of the world's first rides to feature a high-speed switch track. You see, prior to this, whenever there was a switch track involved, the train would be stationary. The train moves over the switch track and comes to a controlled stop. The switch track then changes position, and only after that can the train be released. Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure threw that concept away in favour of a more seamless experience. On the ride, you pass directly over the switch track before launching forwards into a large spike. The entire train then plummets backwards, back over the same switch track which has since moved position, and continues on with the rest of the ride. No stopping, just one fluid movement. Of course, this system comes with its safety features. If the switch track failed to move position during the ride, brakes would bring the train to a rapid stop. Intamin's high-speed switch track has since been copied and pasted all over the world, including on Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg and Two Tatis at Park Asterix. This element isn't the only switch track on Hagrid's long-name roller coaster, however. The ride also features the signature drop track element first seen on 13, making it a truly unique experience from start to finish. All these technology improvements were culminating into something big. New breeds of roller coasters centered around switch track technology. In 2023, Dynamic Attractions debuted Mission Ferrari at Ferrari World Abu Dhabi, their first ever SFX coaster designed to be compatible with as many types of switch tracks as possible. Mission Ferrari opened featuring 2 world-first switch track elements: the seesaw tilt track and the side slide. Using these, the ride attempts to blend a thrilling rollercoaster experience with more story-driven elements. Partway through the ride, guests enter a spherical projection dome. Here, they move on to the seesaw track tilt element. As the film plays, the track tilts back and forth, before releasing guests backwards down a new track to continue their journey. Then, towards the end of the ride, guests find themselves in another story-driven scene. Here, the side slide element takes place. During the experience, the piece of track the train sits on becomes attached to a second piece of track featuring a horizontal roller coaster drop. Then, the entire train, including the track, moves sideways down the small drop before reconnecting with the ride's main track. The final product sounds great, a thrilling, story-led rollercoaster experience. The journey to get there was not at all, however. Dynamic Attractions first announced their SFX coaster in June of 2014, and several months later they revealed Ferrari World would be home to the first. Originally, Mission Ferrari was planned to debut in 2015. However, issues with the prototype switch track hardware and the COVID pandemic drastically delayed the opening. Then, just 2 months after opening, Dynamic Attractions declared bankruptcy, in part due to the expensive and lengthy design process. A second SFX coaster was scheduled to open, Andromeda Base at Genting Skyworld in Malaysia, but remains unfinished to this day. Dynamic Attractions wasn't the only company interested in this new breed of ride, however. In the early 2020s, Intamin announced their own version of the SFX coaster, the Intamin Multidimensional Coaster. Their story is fortunately more positive. With the move, Intamin sought to bring all of their existing switch track technology into a single product, while simultaneously adding new features too, such as the tilting track and side slide first debuted by Dynamic Attractions. Alongside these, Intamin also introduced spinning trains to their version, where the rotation could be controlled throughout the ride experience. This technology was used on Uncharted at Portaventura, which, thanks to it, became the first roller coaster to feature a sidewards launch. During one of the ride's story-driven show scenes, guests rotate 90 degrees. Then, the entire train is launched forwards, propelling guests sideways. 5 versions of Intamin's multi-dimensional coaster exist today, with another 2 planned in the coming years. The creation of bespoke rollercoaster hardware centered around switch tracks simply highlights the ever-increasing demand for this technology. In fact, 2024 saw the return of the bounce track, first seen on Wingers, this time on Europa Park's new flagship rollercoaster, Voltron. Then, 2025 resulted in the grand renaissance of the Vekoma Tilt Coaster, starting with Siren's Curse at Cedar Point. What was once just Gravity Max is now a list of 5 different tilt coasters across the globe. So, what does that leave for the future? Well, we're living it. 2 different rollercoaster manufacturers recently introduced the world's first rides with multiple ways to experience the same track. Intamin's Gold Rush at Drayton Manor in the UK and Vekoma's Jungle Rush at Dreamworld in Australia each use switch tracks to create 2 entirely different ride experiences using the same physical footprint. On Gold Rush, in one cycle, guests climb forward over the lift hill normally. In another, they're released backwards down the lift hill. They then complete a series of launches before a switch tracks connects them with the final piece of track heading back towards the station. The same track, experienced in an entirely different order. On Jungle Rush, guests either board the ride, starting forwards or backwards. Then they climb a lift hill before stopping on an inclined turntable. The table tilts right before releasing guests down the first part of the ride. Halfway through, they re-enter the same turntable, which tilts left, directing trains back towards the station. Here, the experience is changed by what direction you face when you first board the ride. By altering the direction or the order of the layout, both Gold Rush and Jungle Rush become more than just one roller coaster. Guests suddenly get the urge to experience all versions of the ride, massively increasing rerideability. Ultimately, the switch track has come a long way from its humble, maintenance-based beginnings. Thanks to the switch track, roller coasters can now become dynamic storytellers, capable of launching guests backwards, plunging them sideways, or even rewriting the layout partway through the ride. The future roller coasters may no longer be about building them taller, faster, or longer than before. Instead, it's smarter than before, capable of an ever-growing list of unique experiences. But what's your favourite switch-tracked roller coaster? Are you a Revenge of the Mummy enjoyer, or is Hagrid Motorbike Adventure more your style? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.